بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه من والاه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Usul al-Fiqh class. Today inshallah we will continue the discussion of the rules of interpretation, and we are still in the classification of words. However, today we will take new classification. After we discussed classification A, the words that are khafi, mushkil, zahir, and nas, we took after that al-am and al-khas. And today we will take al-mutlaq and al-muqayyad, the absolute and the qualified. This is the last time we mentioned the English term. Online, are you with me? Okay. This is the last time we mentioned this English term. Now we will use the Arabic term. Mutlaq stands for absolute. Muqayyad stands for qualified. But what do we mean by mutlaq? What's the definition of mutlaq? And what's the difference between mutlaq and am? Do you remember what we said about the am? What did we say about al-am? You forgot? Or you did not study? Yes, general, I know. What do we mean by general? Did we say it is definitive? Am? That's not the opinion of majority. What is it? What's the definition of am? You forgot. Number? No. Well, I will leave it to you. I will not tell you, because you had to read it. Mutlaq, here's the definition of mutlaq. Mutlaq denotes a word which is not qualified nor limited in its application. A word that is not limited nor qualified in its application. And these are examples. Book. Now when we said am, what's the difference then between am and mutlaq? Is a book a am word or mutlaq? It could be both? No. Book is mutlaq but not am. Why? Because in order for it to be am, it has to say all books or the books. While when we say book, that is not am. However, at the same time, is it particular or khas? When we say book, is it khas? No, it could be any book. It could be any book. So that's the difference between am and mutlaq. When we say all books, how can we specify from this term, the books or all books? We say Arabic books. So we specify. Or two books. While in regards to mutlaq, when we make it muqayyad, qualified, what do we say? A yellow book. So if you notice, taqyid is for descriptions, while takhsis is for numbers. So when you say book, it could be any book. Man, the same thing. Man is mutlaq. When we say the man, it is what? Am. What kind of man? He is old man. We gave him description, so it became muqayyad. Bird. It could be any bird. Let's read from the book the introduction for the mutlaq and muqayyad. Page 155, please.
Classification C, the absolute and the qualified. Mutlaq denotes a word which is neither qualified nor limited in its application.
This is the definition.
When we say, for example, a book, a bird, or a man, each one is a generic noun which applies to any book, bird, or man without any restriction. In its original state, the mutlaq is unspecified and unqualified. The mutlaq differs from am, however, in that the latter includes all to which it applies, whereas the former can apply to any one of the multitude.
You see, the former, the am, applies to all, while when you say book, it applies to any, but not to all. Anyone could be a book, but it's not all. That's the difference between am and mutlaq. We already said page 155.
However, the ulama have differed regarding the definition of mutlaq and muqayyad. To some ulama, including al-Baydawi,
Baydawi is one of the ulama of Usul.
the mutlaq resembles the am.
According to him, and also some scholars, they say it is the same. Am and mutlaq, khas and muqayyad. They are synonymous. But if you look deeper, actually they are different, as I said.
The mutlaq resembles the am and the muqayyad resembles the khas. Hence, anything which specifies the am can qualify the mutallaq. Both are open to ta'wil, and mutlaq and muqayyad are complementary to am, khas respectively. When the mutlaq is qualified by another word or words, it becomes muqayyad, such as qualifying a book as a green book, or a bird as a huge bird, or a man as a wise man. The muqayyad differs from the khas in that the former is a word that implies an unspecified individuals who are merely distinguished by certain attributes and qualifications.
Okay. Now, why we're discussing this? Again, just like we discussed the am. Based on the definition and based on the difference between am and khas, mutlaq and muqayyad, the rulings are different. What do we mean by this? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you to pay a charity, that's a command. You have to pay a charity. Is it specified? No. So anything that you pay in charity is acceptable. While when He tells you pay charity every day, that's specified. You have to do it every day. While in the previous example, you have to do anything and it is sufficient. We have an example in the book. And the example is from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to free a slave. فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ. What kind of slave? Muslim? It is not qualified. If you say Muslim slave, you qualified it. How you qualified it?
Through the evidence.
Forbiddance of blood. This is a good example. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ. What is forbidden unto you? Al-mayta, carrion. وَالدَّمْ, blood. If it's absolute, if it's mutlaq, then any blood, even one drop, is what? Forbidden. While we have in the other ayah, أَوْ دَمًا مَسْفُوحًا, shedded blood, only when it is shed, when it is abundant. Do we qualify it or no? Do we say the forbiddance of blood applies only when it is lots of blood? If it's 2-3 drops, it is not forbidden. Do we say this or no? No, so even one drop of blood is forbidden. So if you're cooking and there is one drop of blood, it's forbidden. How you say no here and there? You cannot. What is forbidden? See, that's when, just like when you prefer the khas over the am, you need to prefer the muqayyad over the mutlaq. But is this always or no? No? When?
Like in Salah, you were talking, we learned that the forbidden times occur, so there's specific forbidden times. If you have to pray, that's you still pray in those forbidden times if you missed your Salah.
Okay. Give me an example. Like, tell me, now you gave me general example. Specify it.
Say you missed Fajr and then you got up when the sun is rising, which is specifically a forbidden time for prayer. So you get up and you pray Fajr in that time.
Okay. But you still apply the rule that you don't apply in this time. But this is specific. So this is an exception. We're talking about rules in general. Let's read the example from the book first, the same page, 155. An example of mutlaq in the Quran.
The command.
Just the where you stopped, 155, the same page, in the middle. An example of mutlaq in the Quran is the expiation, kafara.
The command in this text is not limited to any kind of slave, whether Muslim or non-Muslim.
Yeah, two lines ahead, 2 lines before that.
An example of a mutlaq in
Yes.
the Quran is the expiation of futile oaths, which is freeing a slave in Surah Al-Maidah. The command in this text is not limited to any kind of slave, whether Muslim or non-Muslims.
Okay, hold on. What's the example that we're talking about?
Paying kafara.
لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. Allah will not hold you accountable for futile ayman. Yet He will hold you accountable for, He will not hold you accountable for the null ayman, for the useless ayman, but He will hold you accountable for the futile ayman. فَكَفَّارَتُهُ, the expiation is to feed 10 people, poor people, or clothe them, or freeing a slave. That slave, was it qualified? It is mutlaq. Freeing a slave, which means it applies to any slave. That's the example. Okay, continue.
In contrast to the first text, which is conveyed in absolute terms, the command in the second ayah is qualified in that the slave to be released must be a Muslim. The mutlaq remains absolute in its application unless there is a limitation to qualify it. Thus, the Quranic prohibition of marriage with your wife's mothers in Surah Al-Nisa is conveyed.
Well, you missed like 2-3 lines. I don't know why. Go back. The command in this text is not limited to any kind of slave, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. Yet in another Quranic passage,
the expiation of erroneous killing consists of freeing a Muslim slave.
Okay. In another passage, but that passage, that another Quranic text, is it about futile oaths? It is about killing. And it specified, or it qualified the mutlaq. It says freeing a believing slave. Now here is the question. Do we carry this ruling to the previous one? The previous one was about what? Oath. Here it is about killing. But the previous one was general. Here it was specific. Here you have to free a believing slave. There you just free a slave. Do we say because here it came freeing a believer slave, there it should be also freeing a believer slave, or no? That is the question. That's the entire issue that we have. Based on that, we will have difference of opinions. Some would say no, some would say yes. Okay.
In contrast to the first text, which is conveyed in absolute terms, the command in the second ayah is qualified in that the slave to be released must be a Muslim. The mutlaq remains absolute in its application unless there is...
Just like the am. The mutlaq, whenever a command is mutlaq, anything is sufficient as long as it is applied. Freeing a slave, you free the slave, that's it. Just like when we say a'am is am, unless there is khas. And the example he gives is also beautiful. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ, forbidden unto you your mothers. By that text, we say the mother-in-law is forbidden. Why? She is still a mother. The grandmother, she is still forbidden. You cannot come and say she is not a mother, she is a grandmother. No, she is a mother. Why? It is mutlaq. Any mother that is true, you could call her mother, even your foster mother. Okay. Read, continue.
Thus, the Quranic prohibition of marriage with your wife's mothers in Surah Nisa is conveyed in absolute terms, and as such, marriage with one's mother-in-law is forbidden regardless as to whether the marriage with her daughter has been consummated or not. Since there is no indication to qualify the terms of the Quranic command, it is to be implemented as it is. But when a mutlaq is qualified into muqayyad, the latter is to be given priority over the former. Thus, if we have
Yes.
two texts,
Now, if the mutlaq is muqayyad, became muqayyad, which takes precedence? Muqayyad. It's specified. It takes precedence. But when do we do taqyid? That's the question. Here, that's the biggest question, and that's the point. That's the core of all this discussion. When to qualify the mutlaq? متى يحصل تقييد المطلق? We have three cases. The first case, we have mutlaq and muqayyad. What do we mean by this? In one ayah, we have a command. Like stealing. What's the punishment of the thief? What's the punishment of the thief? Cutting the hand. What's the reason? Stealing. We have another ayah. Washing the hand. To the elbows. What's the ruling?
up to the elbows.
Obligation. When we say ruling, either you say makruh, haram, mubah, mandub, or wajib. So, obligation. What's the cause? Purification. So we have this example. In one ayah, فَقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا, chop their hands, cut off their hands. In the other ayah, wash your hands to the elbows. Which one is mutlaq? Cutting the hand. Did it specify to what extent? In the other ayah we have, to what extent? To the elbows. Do we say, because it came in the other ayah, wash the hand to the elbow, here it came only cut off the hand, we have to cut off the hand from the elbow? Yes or no?
No.
Why not?
Because
That's mutlaq, here it's muqayyad.
We're not synonymous.
How they are not synonymous?
causes are different. That's for the
Causes are different and rulings are different. The cause and the rule is different. In this case, all scholars, all of them agreed the mutlaq is not qualified by muqayyad. This is the first case. Is this example clear? It is clear. The cause, stealing, purification, they are different. The ruling, prohibition, obligation, different. Then we don't qualify the mutlaq. Next case, Mutlaq and muqayyad are the same in ruling and cause. An example for this. Can you think of any example? I want an example where we have a mutlaq came in one ayah and in another ayah muqayyad. They are the same in the cause and the ruling. Can you think of any ayah or hadith from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's the point behind studying Usul Fiqh. You need to know examples and to apply the rulings. Yes.
Okay, like alcohol.
Alcohol.
The ruling would be haram.
Hmm?
The ruling is haram.
Okay.
The cause is because it's not beneficial for you. And then similarly, like the blood is that it's haram, and then the cause would be because
Blood? What the blood has to do with alcohol? You need to talk about the same thing. In one case it is mutlaq and in another case it is muqayyad. One case you talk about book, the other case you talk about cell phone. That's way off topic. We said raqaba, you free a slave. In another case, believing slave. You cut off the hand. In another case, the hand to the elbow. That's what we're talking about. Give me valid examples, please. If you don't know, say you don't know. Don't give me examples way off the topic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade the blood, as I said. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةُ وَالدَّمُ. Forbidden unto you mayta, carrion, and blood. The blood here, is it qualified or it is general? Answer me. Blood. It is general or mutlaq. It doesn't say green blood. It doesn't say, it is mutlaq. In the other ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أو دما مسفوحا, or shedded blood. Let's apply the rulings. Is it the same cause? Why the blood is forbidden in the first ayah?
Because it's harmful.
It's harmful. Why it is forbidden in the second ayah?
It's harmful.
It's harmful. That's the cause. What's the ruling? Forbidden, forbidden. Are they the same?
Yes.
They are matched. In this ayah, the mutlaq is qualified. So we say, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةُ وَالدَّمُ. Forbidden unto you, carrion and blood. This blood is qualified by all scholars. All of them agreed. Is this example clear? Okay. The next case, where we have mutlaq and muqayyad. They are different in cause, but they are the same in ruling. Can you think of an example for this? They are the same in the ruling. The example that we just mentioned about futile oaths. What's the cause of freeing a slave? in the first ayah?
That you broke your oath.
Taking an oath. What's the cause for freeing a slave in the second ayah? Killing an innocent person. Is the cause the same? Yes or no?
No.
It is different. Is the ruling the same?
Yes.
Yes, here you have to free a slave. Here you have to do what? To free a slave. Here, scholars differed. The majority, including al-Shafi'i rahimahullah and Malik, what do they say? The mutlaq is qualified. According to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and others, the mutlaq is not qualified. So that's the case where we have difference. Again, why do we have different opinions? Because you have to apply the ruling. When the Prophet ﷺ comes and says about an ayah which is mutlaq, that if you take an oath, you free a believing slave, do we need now to apply the rulings? We don't apply anything. The Prophet ﷺ already qualified it. The issue is when you have it general in one case and in another case it is specific. Do you apply it or no? If the Prophet ﷺ said it, it's already done. Or if it's the ayah about the same thing, it's already done. But if it's different ayah, in a different place, do we carry the mutlaq to the muqayyad? Do we do taqeed or no? That's the case. Are these three cases clear? Did you write the examples? It's very important. Application is important, and that's the point. Okay, open the book, page 157, for another example. 157, exactly in the middle.
And lastly, we give another illustration again of two texts, one mutlaq and the other muqayyad, both of which convey the same ruling but differ in respect of their causes. Here we refer to the two Quranic ayah on the subject of witnesses. One of these which requires the testimony of two witnesses.
Okay, that's again the same example for which case of these cases that we have? First, second, or third? Very good, Alia. It is the third case. Okay.
One of these which requires testimony of two witnesses in all commercial transactions is conveyed in absolute terms, whereas the second is qualified. The first of the two texts does not qualify the word men when it states, and bring two witnesses from among your men.
Yes, you understand the example? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if there is a transaction, bring two witnesses of your men. Two witnesses of your men. Does it say rich witnesses, poor witnesses, trustworthy witnesses, lying witnesses? It doesn't say anything. That's the ruling. You bring two witnesses. What's the cause? Transaction. We're doing transaction. That's the cause. The next ayah, but the second text.
But the second text on the same subject conveys a qualified command when it states, and bring two just witnesses when you revoke a divorce.
Okay, what's the cause for the two witnesses here?
For the divorce.
Divorce. Is it the same cause?
No.
What's the ruling?
Same.
Bring two witnesses. So the ruling is the same. You need two witnesses, but the cause is different. Do we qualify the muqayyad? And we say that in the previous example, in matters of transactions, it's not enough to bring two witnesses. They have to be trustworthy, or no? According to the majority, including al-Shafi'i, yes. It is the same ruling, two witnesses here, two witnesses there. It's different cause, we qualify the mutlaq. According to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, no.
The ruling in both texts is the same, namely the requirement of two witnesses. But the two rulings differ in respect of their causes. The cause of the first text, as already noted, is commercial transaction, which must accordingly be testified to by two men, whereas the cause of the second ruling is the revocation of talaq. In the first ayah, witnesses are not qualified, but they are qualified in the second ayah.
In the first ayah, only 2 witnesses of your men. In the second ayah, 2 trustworthy witnesses. So they are qualified.
Consequently, the
latter prevails.
The latter prevails over the former. Consequently, witnesses in both commercial transactions and revocation of talaq must be upright and just.
That's the opinion of who? The majority, not Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Okay.
The foregoing basically represents the majority opinion. But the Hanfis maintain that when the muqayyad and mutlaq differ in their causes, the one does not qualify the other, and that each should be implemented independently. The Hanfis basically recognize only one case where the muqayyad qualifies the mutlaq. That is when both convey the same ruling and have same cause in common.
You see, like the first case we have. The second case.
But when they differ in either of these respects or in both, then each must stand separately. In this way, the Hanfis do not agree with the majority in regard of qualification of the area of the arms to be wiped in tayammum by the same terms which apply to the ablution of water.
That's another example. Now we have tayammum and we have water. When you have tayammum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked you to wipe what? Your hands. In wudu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you to wipe up to the elbows. The ruling is the same, wiping the hands, but the cause is different. Do we say it qualifies? It should, but that's according to the rules. But there is a separate evidence where the Prophet ﷺ said like this. But in general, if there was no evidence, it should be qualified. The Hanafis say no. Okay, this is the issue about mutlaq and muqayyad. It is a little bit similar to the am and the khas. Now the next topic that we have is the literal and metaphorical, or what we say haqiqi and majazi. Our topic here is about the conflict. When there is conflict, like we have a word. We mentioned this example several times. Lion. Lion literally means what? Animal. It could mean also the brave man. When do we apply it to an animal and when do we apply it to a brave man? Based on that, in fiqh also, the ruling is different. How it's different? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do something, like salah. What's the meaning of salah?
Supplication.
Supplication. That's the literal meaning. But the religious meaning is what?
Prayer.
Praying. The known prayer, the well-known prayer that we do. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us establish prayer, do we say it means establish supplication or it means establish the common prayer that we know?
Common prayer.
How? Isn't it possible that it is dua? It is possible. You cannot say no, it is possible. But why we disregard this possibility? That's the issue that we're talking about here. Because that will create also some conflict. What's the definition of majaz? What's the definition of majaz? Now when you mean by lion, a courageous man, what do we say? A word that is not used in its original sense or original meaning. But for a reason. There has to be a reason. In the book it says a transfer of a word from its literal to a connected meaning. There has to be connection. It is written in the book. Okay, read. Page 158.
A word may be used in its literal sense, that is, for its original or primary meaning, or it may be used in secondary and metaphorical sense. When a word is applied literally, it applies its original meaning, but when it is used in a metaphorical sense, it is transferred from its original to a secondary meaning on grounds of relationship between the two meanings. There is normally a logical connection between the literal and metaphorical meanings of a word. The nature of this relationship varies and extends over a wide range of possibilities. There are at least 30 to 40 variations in how the metaphorical usage of a word may relate to its literal meaning. The metaphorical usage of a word thus consists of a transfer from an original to a connected meaning. Once such a transfer has taken place, both the original and metaphorical meanings of a word cannot be assigned to it at one and the same time.
Yes, here is the thing. Now, when we have a word that is possible, lion or courageous man, brave man, it cannot apply for both at the same time. Sometimes you could mean by the lion the animal, and sometimes you could mean the brave man. You cannot mean both of them at the same time. It has to be either lion or brave man. And here comes the difference, because when we have an ayah that has several meanings and we are not sure to which one of them, it cannot be assigned to both of them. And that's why some scholars will choose this one and some scholars will choose that one based on the evidences. Next page, 160, I'm sorry. Paragraph, 5th line. The haqiqi, the literal.
The haqiqi is subdivided according to the context in which it occurs into linguistic, customary.
Even now, the literal, haqiqi, there is haqiqa lughawiyya, linguistic meaning. What do you mean by that? The meaning that is in language. You open the dictionary and you see the meaning of word. This is haqiqa lughawiyya. Then we have haqiqa shar'iyya, religious, literal religious meaning. Then we have haqiqa urfiyya, customary meaning. If you study grammar in Arabic, do you know some letters in Arabic? Do you know the articulations at least? Have you heard the word dhamma?
No.
What's the meaning of dhamma?
I know shadda is for the stress.
Shadda,
For the stress.
for the stress.
Or
Dhamma, dhamma is a little waw. What does it mean? Dhamma, when you see dhamma, qu, because it has dhamma. What's the literal meaning of dhamma in Arabic? Yadummu. What's the literal meaning of dhamma? In Arabic, the literal meaning. Yadum means to hug or to hold. That's the meaning of dhamm. But because we are talking in grammar, that's a technical usage. Rafa', or we call rafa'. What's the meaning of rafa'? This is marfu'. Marfu' in Arabic means at the end of the word there is dhamma or tanween, bil rafa'. While the literal meaning of rafa' is what? To lift. See? How we change the entire meaning. There is a connection, there is still connection. But this is a technical meaning. And this is literal meaning. Read.
the linguistic haqiqi is a word which is used in its dictionary meaning, such as lion for that animal and the man for the male gender of the human being. The customary haqiqi occurs in the two varieties of general and special. When a word is used in a customary sense and the custom is absolutely common among people, the customary haqiqi is classified as general. That is in accord with general custom. An example of this in Arabic is the word
dabba. What's the meaning of dabba? Dabba. وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. Dabba from yadub. Yadub means to walk on earth. So literally it applies to anyone that walks on earth. Does it include men and women or no? Do we walk on earth or no? So we are dabba. But if you tell someone who's Arab, you are dabba, he will slap you in the face. Why? Because it is customary that dabba is for animals only. Why? The custom usage became so common that the literal usage is not known anywhere. So which takes precedence here? Which meaning? The literal or the customary? Customary. The same thing with rafa'. When we are talking in nahu, grammar, when I say al-marfu' bil-dhamm, you don't think of lifting, you think of the dhamma, the articulation. Okay.
Which in its dictionary meaning applies to all living beings that walk on the face of the earth, but which has been assigned a different meaning by general custom, that is, an animal walking on 4 legs. But when the customary haqiqi is used for meaning that is common to a particular profession or a group, the customary haqiqi is classified as special, that is, in accord with a special custom. For example, the Arabic word raf, nominative, and nasb, accusative, have each acquired a technical meaning that is common among grammarians and experts in the language. There is some disagreements as to the nature of the judicial haqiqi, as some ulama
Juridical haqiqi.
as some ulama considered this to be a variety of the Hajazi. But having said this, the juridical haqiqi is defined as a word which is used for juridical meaning that the lawgiver has given it in the first place, such as salah.
Salah. Now when I say salah, what do I mean by this? Could I mean the dua? Yes, but do you understand from it dua or prayer? Prayer, because that's the religious meaning and it takes precedence. If I could mean dua, but I have to clarify this. The context has to be assigned. While to understand it, prayer, I don't need any evidence because that's the original religious meaning for it.
Which literally means supplication, but which in its well-established juridical sense is a particular form of worship. Similarly, the word zakah literally means purification, but in its juridical sense denotes a particular form of charity whose details are specified by the Sharia.
Okay, next paragraph, skip the coming one and move to the next one. If the application of a word
In such that it clearly discloses the speaker's intention, it is plain, otherwise it is elusive. The highest degree of clarity in expression is achieved by a combination of plain and the literal haqiqi, such as sentence, Ahmed bought a house, or Fatima married Ahmed.
Okay, now we don't want this. We will take an example because that's the point behind studying this. What's the point studying haqiqi and majazi? We will have difference of opinions when there is contradiction. Can you think of any example in the Quran where we have a word that has a real meaning, literal meaning, and it has also another meaning?
Surah Maida, ayat number 5, which has touching a woman.
Very good. That's a good example. Touching women. أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاء. أَوْ لَمَسْتُمُ النِّسَاء. What does it mean? Literally, what touching means? Touching. Does it have another meaning? Metaphorical meaning? Yes, what's the metaphorical meaning? The sexual intercourse. And based on that, we have the difference of opinions. Some scholars said it doesn't mean the literal meaning. It means sexual intercourse. Others say no, it means touching. And based on that, some scholars said the moment you touch a foreign woman, you have to perform wudu. Other scholars said no, you don't perform wudu because that's not meant in the ayah. See, that's a clear example for the difference. So your job to assign the meaning for that word that is plausible. It could be haqiqi, it could be majazi. This is your job. Inna ash-shirka la dhulmun azim. It could be, yeah. When you say dhulm, here means shirk. Okay, I think that's enough, inshallah. Is there any questions about? Go ahead. We still have the homonym, but we will leave it, inshallah, for next session. Okay, هذا وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى صحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.